Did you know that there are over 5,000 genetic counselors across the US and Canada? Yet most people have no idea what a genetic counselor is and have never heard of us. I've been all over social media, Instagram and TikTok, and now YouTube, because I want to change that. My name is Dina Goldberg. I'm a board certified genetic counselor, and today let's talk about what even is a genetic counselor and why would someone go to see one? What is a genetic counselor? Okay, I kind of love but also hate the question, what is a genetic counselor? Because it's so hard to answer. So I have my personal definition that I like to use, at cocktail parties and social events, that I am a healthcare professional who specializes in helping people understand their risk for disease and how to get ahead of that risk by using genetic testing and other history information. That's my personal definition. Honestly, genetic counselors can fit so many roles that I don't think one definition really encompasses everyone, except for the very general definitions. Every genetic counseling session and every genetic counselor is going to be different. There are some underlying skill sets that we have, and everyone's using kind of a different set of these skills that you learn when you're trained and then later when you're on the job. There are genetic counselors who practice in a clinic seeing patients, those who work in research, and those who work in industry and many other fields. So it's really hard to define what a genetic counselor is outside of somebody who has this specialized training and certification. But I'm going to try my best. So over the years, there's been a lot of different definitions of what a genetic counselor actually is, but a very simple way to think about it is that we are allied healthcare professionals, meaning that we are a member of a healthcare team. And we specialize in genetics and the emotional implications of genetic disease and disclosure. We are trained in both the science and the emotional, or what we call psychosocial side of genetics. So earlier I said that I was a board certified genetic counselor. So what does that mean? After my undergraduate degree, my bachelor's, I went on and got a master's degree in genetic counseling. And some programs are in medical genetics and many programs are part of a medical school. I completed my master's program where I did a master's thesis, conducted research, and did a certain number of hours of patient care and clinical rotations. Once you finish that, then you are eligible to take the board exam. And so then you go on and take the board exam and you get a national board certification from the American Board of Genetic Counseling. Once you have that board certification, then our degree designation is MS, CGC, which is Masters of Science and Certified Genetic Counselor. So that's the board certification. But then if your state requires licensure, then in order to actually see patients, you have to get a license for that state. So if you're seeing patients in multiple states, then you get licensure in each of those states. And not every state in the US has licensure. It just depends on where you're seeing your patients. In order to maintain your certification and your state license, we also have to stay up to date with continuing education, just like many other healthcare providers. It allows everyone to make sure that they are up to date on the latest information and the most modern and updated standards of care in our specialty and in other specialties. Like I said, there are only a few thousand genetic counselors, and so a lot of us actually know each other, or we know of each other. It's a very growing field, so lots of new graduate programs are being established, more clinical rotations are being added, and more people are starting to meet that demand of more genetics in our healthcare system. Genetic counselors really fill this dual role. We deliver test results, but we also walk patients through that information and what it means for that person sitting in front of us and for their family members. We help them understand either their risk for a condition or the reason why they have a condition. And we are interpreting genetics, but we're also helping our patients understand how to incorporate that information into their own medical care plan and then how to communicate that with family members or others who might be at risk as well. We understand how genetics impacts your health and how to translate that to actionable information. There's this misconception that genetic counseling and genetic testing is the same thing, and I'm going to go into that in a future video, but we are looking at your genes as only one tool in our tool belt. We look at your whole picture. So that's your personal history, your family history, the timing, your values, and your goals. We want to put all together to give us a really good picture of either your risk for disease or an underlying diagnosis for something you're already experiencing. For instance, you might come in for genetic testing for cancer risk, but then when we take a family history, we actually realize that you have a really high risk of heart disease, or that you haven't yet had carrier screening and are planning on having a pregnancy. Something totally different based on that history. So the genetic counseling portion of a genetic testing process is really helpful when we look at the whole picture of our patient. We are practicing in many different settings. That can mean in the prenatal setting, working with pregnant couples and individuals. It could mean in the pediatric setting, working with children who have unexplained medical issues and trying to help them find a diagnosis. It could be in the adult preventative setting. That could be looking at someone's risk for developing a disease that runs in their family, or if somebody's diagnosed with cancer, looking at their tumor markers to help their oncology team understand the underlying mechanisms of their cancer. Because we practice in a lot of settings, the genetic counseling process is going to look different from one setting to the next. I've talked about this before on my social media, but there's a lot of different ways that people end up at a genetic counselor's office, and a lot of different ways that the genetic counseling may look depending on the situation, the condition, the clinic, the setting. It's really tailored to the patient, which is why it's just hard to explain. For many years, there was a lot of back and forth over how to actually define a genetic counselor, and there's never been a really concise definition that encompasses what genetic counseling is, because it can be so different. My training was over 10 years ago, and I rotated through all the different specialty clinics, but my particular specialty became oncology or cancer genetics. And then I opened my private practice, and I see people for cancer risk assessment, but also for proactive genetic testing, which is kind of a newer area within genetic counseling. So my sessions are going to look really different from somebody who is a fertility genetic counselor, a prenatal genetic counselor, or a pediatric genetic counselor. When I make this next video series, I'm going to be speaking mostly out of my own personal experience and what that would look like. There are other types of genetic counselors who will use a lot of the same skills that I have, but their day-to-day is going to look very different, and their appointments and conditions they work with and type of patient is also going to be very different. If you would prefer to see a genetic counselor and you're watching this because you want to understand what to expect, then you can look at some of my other videos, because I will be going into a little bit more detail about what genetic counselors do. Okay, I just said a lot of stuff, and honestly, I don't even think I accurately described what genetic counselors do, which is really the issue here. It can look so different depending on the situation. And so I think the best way to really explain what a genetic counselor is to show you. Stay tuned for more of my videos. I suggest watching more and hitting subscribe, because it's going to make a little more sense once you learn a little bit more. You can also find me on Instagram and TikTok, or see me in clinic with the links that I have in the description.